Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here, and today we've got a Megacolony deck profile. Not from Dreamsicle this time though. For veterans of the channel, you may remember there was a previous Master Beetle deck profile, which is 90% meme and 10% copium. But today we've actually got one from more of a Megacolony main. He's been testing this a lot, went through a lot of different deck choices actually, so we have a more high quality profile here today. Perhaps to service as a redemption for all the MC mains that are like, what is this garbage? Or just to throw better content out there, you know, every YouTuber's dream, right? So we got Maz on the channel. Say hi.
Did you just call Megacolony garbage?
No, just the opposite actually.
Okay,
it's great.
Sure. Just making sure I didn't mishear that. But anyway, hey there, how's it going? My name is Maz. Thank you so much for having me on. And I'm excited to talk about one of my favorite decks that have ever existed.
Hell yeah, baby. Let's start off the top. What do we got for grade 3s?
So for our grade 3s, we are running 4 copies of the Master Beetle and 3 copies of Intrude Scissors. And those are the only grade 3s minus the triggers that we run in the deck.
All right. Okay, so, when it comes to these units, at least when it comes to Master Beetle, it's a relatively recent unit. So just to explain a little bit to us about what's up with Master Beetle, what he does, and why he sort of stands out versus other Megacolony strategies.
Yeah, sure. So the cool thing about Master Beetle is, well, he has 2 cool things. So his first effect, which is a act once per turn, Counterblast 1, choose up to 2 of your opponent's rear guards, rest them, stun them, and if it's on Vanguard circle, he gains the power. And then when he's attacking, you can counterblast another and discard a card to make him gain drives for every 3 rested units on the entire field, which includes your opponent's units and your own units. So with the entire rested field, he's swinging for, hold on, let me make sure that I'm doing my math correct. 3 there, 3 there, 3 there. Yeah, 6 drives.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, and against Excel, oh, baby.
Yeah, against Excel, you can go very easily up to 7 drives on their first ride because every single Excel deck is playing something that gives them 2 Excel markers on their first ride. So, hey, if it helps me, I don't complain.
Yeah, that's fair. Freaking so Paralyze, get lots of drive. That is pretty good all around. Pretty distinctive. Not just for gaining you advantage, of course, which to be honest, gaining advantage is about as good as it gets, but Megas don't really have problems with advantage. I think we can agree on that. But Master Beetle
depends on the deck.
Yeah, that's true. But still, when it comes to Master Beetle, what do you think are like the relative strengths of this card compared to other grade 3s?
So the fact that the resting is anytime during the turn, that is super important because of what we're running in our grade 2s, that you're actually able to have either both of their columns completely stunned, a full column stunned, and either both of their boosters or an interceptor and a booster stunned. So you can have almost their entire board stunned thanks to Master Beetle and all the support that Megacolony has gotten around it.
Yeah, that's the mega dream. So of course 4 of him makes sense. I mean, no one's gonna question that it's a Master Beetle deck. It literally is called Maz's Master Beetle. But tell me, my boy, why 3 Intrude Scissor?
So the 3 Intrude Scissors is, 1, I don't want to see this card in my hand. If I do, it's getting discarded every single time. So there's only 1 card inside, well, not 1 card, there's 2 cards inside here that you want to discard with, but that doesn't happen usually until the late game. So the 3 is just so that I can make sure that I see it, but not too often that it ends up accidentally being the only grade 3 in my hand that I can ride. But the main reason that it's even here in the deck at all is after you're done swinging with Master Beetle, realistically, your entire board is rested. So this gives you the extra attacks after the drives to make your turn a little bit more threatening.
Yeah, that is interesting. Plus, on top of it, one thing what's cool about Intrusive Scissors is your ability to discard in this deck is like way higher than usual. You know, not only do you have the benefit of being a Protect Clan, Master Beetle discards for effect, and then we have a lot of other Megacolony cards that could potentially discard. Some new cards from Clan Collection, even oldie but goodies like Dorcas. So yeah, it's pretty easy to get this guy in the drop. How often do you think you manage to get his call effect from the drop, though? Do people read Megacolony cards?
They do, however, with the way that I like to play this deck, I always like to manipulate both my damage and my opponent's damage to a certain degree. So by the time that I'm swinging with my Master Beetle, or just swinging on my turn in general, they either got to take a hit or they're not going to be able to play next turn.
Okay, so you put them into a catch-22 situations where they can be aware of the situation, but they still have to make tough choices, and you get it off anyway sometimes. That makes sense.
Oh yeah, and Catch 22 is a very good analogy to use for this, since when Intrusive Scissor comes out, he's going to be 22k.
Yeah, 22k, which, I mean, heck, you know, if you're facing off against other Protect and Excel, that's just, I mean, that's about as good as the numbers you can get. Oh boy, there's just a lot to love there. So yeah, that's cool. All right, so that's like basically the grade 3s, but grade 2 lineup, pretty nice, just 12 grade 2s. Let's go over one at a time.
Yep, so first we have the Elite Mutant Carafa. You have 4 copies of that. Very simple guy. He can, on attack, counterblast 1, get plus 5k, or is it 4k? Yeah, no, it's 5k for every rested unit that your opponent has. So if you go second with this and they decide to grade 2 game you, well, guess what? Big number to the face. But the more important thing about him is his second effect that makes it so that all the units in your opponent's column that he's in cannot move to other circles and cannot intercept.
Interesting.
So, the thing is that you can stun the board, but if you can't stop their interceptors, the stun doesn't matter too much. So having the Elite here helps with making sure that the stun units stay there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Having played with and against the deck a fair bit of times, that's sort of one of the biggest ways to get around stun is just by using intercept, because Lord knows when you're playing something like Giraffe and they just call a couple interceptors from the hand, it's kind of irritating.
Yeah, and having said that, we go on to our next grade 2, Machining Armor Beetle. Yep. He does something very similar as well. He doesn't gain plus 5 for every unit though. He can rest something on your board to then give himself 6k and also stun something in the process. And if he's rested, all of your opponent's rear guards in the same column lose intercepts and boost and cannot gain them.
So it's essentially like Giraffe's skill, but it's a little bit different. But just like as a question, right? Do you believe that Machining Armor Beetle or Giraffe has the better quote unquote stun effect here?
Definitely Machining Armor Beetle.
All right, fair enough.
It has to be rested for the skill to go off. But every time that I'm playing this deck, I have him on the field. I have a Giraffe in my other column, and usually I actually have 2 Machining Armor Beetles in the same column, using the one that's in the front row to rest the one in the back row. That way, if I call out my Intrusives that turn, I can safely call over the Machining Armor Beetle that's in the front row and still have the one rest in the back row, so that column is still stunned.
Clever. Yeah, that's a good combo. I mean, heck, another combo, which I'm not sure how many people realize about this, you know, Megacolony isn't exactly a clan a lot of people study, but when they do, there's a lot of good combos, is the Brilliant Blister, which, yeah, surprise, guys, there's Brilliant Blister in this deck. The Brilliant Blister is interesting because it doesn't even need to boost to just bounce itself back at the end of the turn from the back row. So you could just, in theory, rest that guy anyway with Armor Beetle, and then it'll just bounce back anyway.
Oh yeah, that's not a theory. I do that all the time.
Yeah, that's something that it's a fun little thing. Just for reference for the audience, I play a fair bit of Megacolony as well. One of those clans actually where I don't do it very often, but it's one of those ones where I appreciate it a lot, just because it's one of the most interesting and fun ones to play once you get it down, of course. But anyway, that's enough Personal anecdotes. Back to the deck. So what's next on our grade 2s?
The last grade 2 is the newest card that's in this deck, which is Megacolony Battler S. And let me say this, all right? When this card was first revealed, I know everyone was complaining about it, saying that it was bad, saying it wasn't that good. They said that was only good when Garafa Reverse was revealed. No. The moment this card got revealed, I knew exactly the potential that this had. Let's read this out for a second, all right? Auto. When this unit is placed on rearguard circle, Soul Blast 1, your opponent chooses a card from their hand, call it to rearguard as rest, and the card cannot stand during the next stand phase. Your opponent's auto abilities do not activate. It's missing the part where your opponent draws a card afterwards as well, which is a mistranslation. But the most important part about that is that it calls a card stunned.
And note to the audience, this card has already been errata, so this is not a mistranslation that's going to stick in the English version. It is errata, so the opponent will be able to draw a card off that effect. Do note that. Anyway, continue.
Yep, and then the other one where if it's in your drop zone once per turn, if your opponent has no standing units, discard a card from your hand, call it to a rear guard, and soul charge. So, two things. One, that's only a once per turn per copy.
That's true.
So if you have more than one of these guys in your job zone for every reason, which you will, you can call out them just by discarding cards. Oh hey, discarding. Remember when I said I wanted a certain unit in my drop zone the entire time? Here's one of the things that gets intrusives out of your hand so you don't have to worry about it.
Synergy.
Yep. And more importantly is that it soul charges 1, which we don't use a lot of Soul Blast cost, but this card is literally free if you do this. Because you soul charge 1 and then you can just Soul Blast the card that you literally just soul charged off of it.
Yeah, and the discard doesn't even matter because you get this from drop to open rare anyway, so it's like a 1-for-1 exchange. So it's like you said, it's literally just freaking free.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my grade 2 lineup. And with this grade 2 lineup, so basically using both the Armor Beetle and also the Battler S alongside Master Beetle is how you get your 4 units on your opponent's side stunned. So very important that this is the order that you do it. First, you want to use the Battler S's skill.
All right.
It's important to do that one because that's the only one that rips the card from your opponent's hand at rest.
Okay.
So that's the one you want to activate first. Then if the one that they called is to the front row, it's fine. If they did call it to the back row, it's even better. Then you want to stun the 2 front row units using your Master Beetle because that's probably going to get you the most power. Then finally, usually I'm calling the Battler S to the back row. You can rest the Battler S to then use the Armor Beetle to stun the last one. So that's how you get your 4 stunned on the field.
Nice. Okay. And then with the 4 stun combined with your 5 rear guards, presumably, you're able to get an extra 3 drive from that. That's impressive.
Yep. Since, 5 rear guards on your opponent's field, 5 on your field, with that's 10 rear guards that are going to be rested. So yeah, 3 drives extra. And like I said, with the Excel deck, they're going to have their 2 Excel circles usually, so that's 12 that's going to be rested.
It's a very nice stratified lineup of grade 2s. Just 3 4-ofs, which just very simple, very consistent. Heck, I guess one of the only weaknesses to note here is only one of them is even a decent Vanguard, although I suppose when you look at it closer, you could say that Battler S is not that bad because if you Soul Blast her out, then suddenly she's live in the drop.
Yeah, so yeah, it's usually Battler S or Elite that I want to ride. I will say this much is that I usually don't have to worry about missing my ride with Elite. Like, even though I'm not playing the Cuba to search it out or anything like that, I usually don't have games where I miss my ride, is what I'm saying.
Okay, that makes sense. That's cool. And I suppose with just a 4 grade 2 lineup, it is fairly difficult to miss your ride. So that is good. Just as like a quick question, there are a couple of other like grade 2s that people opt to run. One of them being machining Mantis. So is there any reasoning for why not to run the Mantis in this deck? Because it tends to be a staple in a lot of variants.
So here's the thing about me not running Mantis in this deck. So Intrude Scissors uses a counterblast, and Master Beetle uses 2 counterblasts. And you're gonna see I only run 1 card that can even countercharge in this deck, and it's only a once per turn countercharge.
Best card on the card.
Yeah, so adding in the machining, the machining Mantis is, first of all, it's just another grade 3 searcher, which is fine, but since I'm running the 7 regular grade 3s, I only have 7 targets that I want to hit, and of those 7 targets that I want to hit, the only one that I really want to hit on a consistent basis and have in my hand is Master Beetle. So I don't have the need to be searching grade 3s constantly, since the only ride target that I really want is Master Beetle, and it's already a 4 of anyway.
Okay, interesting. That is fairly good logic. It is a little bit disconcerting since the only viable ride you have for grade 3 is Master Beetle. So if you don't hit him somehow, it's going to be fairly trippy. But I suppose you can attest it's.
But
how consistent
we have ways to circumvent it,
right.
Which is when I explain the triggers, I will get further into that. But before that, let's go down to our grade 1s.
All right, grade 1 time. Let's get the elephant out of the room, shall we? So we got 4M. What's up with that?
Okay, so the reason why I have 4 Battler M's is for one reason and one reason only: shield. The fact that he can become a huge shield in your hands that also calls himself out is the reason why I have this guy at 4 in this deck at all.
Okay. So, generally speaking, it's obviously he's going to be a 20k shield, which is fairly cool considering we're going to talk about shield values later on, I'd imagine. But one thing to question, though, he calls himself to an open rear, so that's a +1 when you think about it in terms of card economy, and you get to soul charge 1. So we're building up a lot of soul. Do you have soul issues in this deck at all? Because it seems as though you don't have that much soul blast going on for this soul charge, so it seems like everything's fine, right?
So that's what you would think at first glance. However, having the extra soul charge helps out because Brilliant Blister, each copy needs a soul, and then Intrude Scissors, if I want to be using that every turn, that also takes up a soul when it's in my well, not even when it's in the drop zone, when it's placed, it takes up a soul. So I got 2 things that I'm realistically using soul for every turn. Well, maybe not Brilliant Blister once it runs out, but I will be using soul with the Intrude Scissors almost every single turn. So I want to make sure that there's not a chance that I accidentally run out of soul for whatever reason.
Okay, that's good. You got it on lockdown then. Always just have enough soul. And I suppose as well, when you think about soul charges, the only real soul charge that you're going to get is M, because in the case of S, more than likely you're just going to soul blast it out. So she just pays for herself and that's it. It's not building your soul.
Exactly. M is, S is just a +0 in soul. M is a +1 in soul. So it's pretty important to have that soul charge on it when I can, and I'm usually always using it as the last guard, and the board's stunned. Well, not stunned, but the board's always rested anyway, so I always get the soul charge off of it.
Nice. All right, well, that's M. So important for shield value, good for a deck that's not exactly going to burst onto the seam, and the soul charge is always nice. So that's reasonable. Kind of an undervalued card. As a matter of fact, even I didn't think much about it because Megacolony grade 1s are so kick-ass already that it's sort of tight to make space for it.
Yeah, another card that everyone underestimated until Garafa Reverse was revealed. Nope. When I saw S&M, I was like, yes, give me more S&M. Give me more S&M.
Yes, I can already hear Salt Rider taking that out of context for his risky joke quota.
God damn it. Anyway, other grade 1. Obviously, we have Dorcas.
Right. You know, staple. Kind of hard to question about it. Another discard. Just gets 5k when there's no stand units. Just perfectly in line with the deck strategy. Don't think there's anything special to note here, right?
The special thing to note actually is that people will try to play around Dorcas. And whenever that happens, they usually only ever leave 1 standing unit. But because we can rest up to 4 on our turn and stun them, we always get our +5 off. So we never are missing out on our 13k booster if we need it.
That's another value of just having the axe skill of Master Beetle and Armor Beetle. They're not conditional. You just have them live all the time. So it's hard to... Yeah, you're right. It is. It's basically impossible to deny Dorcas. Something has to be going very wrong.
The only thing that they can do to make sure that I can't get a Dorcas off is literally have their entire field standing. Which at that point, I'm not taking damage.
Yeah, like, well, that'd be ridiculous. I don't even know how that would happen. That's funny as hell. Imagine all of that, just a 95k boost. Smile. All right, so now we got a couple 3-ofs here. What's up for the 3-ofs? We got High Class Moth and Brilliant Blister, 2 of the most influential Megacolony cards of recent memory. What's there to say about these guys? You know what? You pick. What do we start with?
All right, so let's start off with High Class Moth.
Cool.
Because this card, normally in the other deck that I played, which is Gun and Colio, this is a 4 of, because this is my main ride target in that deck. Since I want to get a grade 3 in Soul ASAP, it's considered a grade 3 in Soul. That fact is not important in this deck. The only important fact is that it is able to countercharge and potentially stop something from intercepting. So, remember when I was talking about Excel decks earlier and how extra circles and everything? Well, when they're on the extra circles, they are able to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Armor Beetle and Girafa do nothing to them since they can't be in their columns. So this guy here is how we're able to stop those units on those Excel circles from ever intercepting.
Even I didn't think about that one. That's really true. Okay, that's a cool thing to know. Just as like a general rule of thumb, is there anything in particular that you prioritize bot decking with High Class Moth?
It depends on what is in my drop zone. If I have, let's say, Brilliant Blister in my drop zone and a Dorcas in my hand, well, I'm going to bot deck that Brilliant Blister if I've already, obviously it's already been used, but I'll bottom deck the Brilliant Blister usually so that when I do call up my Dorcas next turn, I can shuffle my deck so I can make the chance of me drawing that Brilliant Blister a little bit better.
Right. That's a good point. Blister.
That's usually the target for that, if I'm being honest. If I don't have that, it's usually just like a piece of the stunners that I'm missing that got damaged and healed. I'll tuck that back into deck with the same idea that I'll shuffle the deck at some point to make it more likely that I end up drawing into the missing piece that I need to stun all 4 units.
Fair enough. So I suppose priority number 1 is going to have to go to your Brilliant Blister for defense plays, but barring that, you might just toss back in something like an Armor Beetle or whatever because they're also fairly important.
Yeah, if I've already gone through most of my Armor Beetles, yeah, that gets shuffled back as well with the same mentality.
Oh, okay, that's pretty fair. Speaking of Brilliant Blister, here is this guy. Now, I personally still think that High Class Moth is low-key the best card in Megacolony, but I think a lot of people is going to argue that it's Brilliant Blisters because this dude is nuts. So, talk about it.
All right, so first things first, let's talk about the most important thing about him. He can bounce himself back to hand at the end of the turn if your opponent's field is rested. Not stunned, just rested, which I've already explained how extremely easy that is to do. But more importantly is if he's bounced back to hand, if you have 6 or less cards, Soul Blast 1 and draw a card. Then the second skill, if your opponent's Vanguard is rested, Soul Blast 1, discard a card. When it's in the Guardian Circle, choose one of their units and rest it. So, as you can see, this uses 2 Soul, which we've already got our Soul Charger accounted for, so we don't need to worry about that too much. But the more important thing is that you can stop your opponent's turn early with this. And even stopping their turn early, okay, let's say we have 2 Brilliant Blisters in hand, we call both of them, we Soul Blast 2, we discard 2, we rest both of their front row units that they can't do any more attacks, assuming they're not an Excel clan. Okay, they keep their boosters standing. Great. Master Beetle rests them next turn.
Yeah, that's true. Not to mention that because you're resting one of their units and it's stunned, that just also lends itself to the more resting things. Like, it's a synergistic part of the strategy. One thing to question about Brilliant Blister, because I'm not sure if this is a variant thing between Megacolony players, although I'm not sure if I would consider myself like quote unquote Megacolony player. I just like to play a couple different variants, but I find it pretty difficult to make use of the Soul Blast and draw a card unless I'm in a super simplified game state. Do you like to throw down a lot of cards early in order to try and milk that, or is it better just to hold off and keep cards in hand?
So the draw doesn't come up as often as you would think, which, yeah, that's true. However, in the situations where I don't ride my Garafa and I just don't have access to it, this card gives me the same draw that I would have gotten off of the Garafa anyway.
Okay, that is a fair note. So even though it's something that can pop up and will be nice, oftentimes, just in general, right, the rule of thumb is don't try to play into this too much unless you're really desperate for cards. Perhaps you're trying to dig for a piece or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair.
Like, when the draw comes up, it comes up, but it's not something that you're actively trying to achieve. Like, if you try to grade 2 rush them using all your other cards, you'll definitely get the draw no matter what. But usually what I'm doing when I'm playing the deck is I'm usually just riding my grade 2 by itself and then just swinging with it alone. And usually the only other unit that I'll ever have on field is Dorcas. And if I miss the search off of Dorcas, well, either way, I'll be getting a draw off if I have the Brilliant Blister with it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's probably one of the most insane things about this card in particular that just goes underappreciated is the fact that it's essentially going to be able to free bounce itself every turn, multiple copies, even if you have multiple copies. So
that's actually the reason why I'm playing 3 of it, because at most you're only going to need the 3 to do the bounce, since, you know, I don't have a 4th column. So having the 3, bouncing them back to my hand every single time. Sometimes I'll be able to get a draw 2 off of that, usually not. But just the 3 here always feels right to me. Having the 4th one just feels like I'm wasting resources for no other reason other than doing the stuns that I can just do next turn anyway.
Fair enough. So 3 is the optimal ratio then. It's not too much, but it's also not too little. You see it just enough to make it relevant. That's good.
For what I'm trying to do, it's the optimal ratio.
Cool. That's the grade 1. So of course zeros, let's just be real, Directus, it's just a B starter. Take your pick between this Machine Worker Ant, because guess what, Mega's only got 2 of them. I know, tragic. So what about the
doesn't matter that they only have 2 starters. I will say this until they create a 3rd one, but of the 2, Directus is the better.
Directus is the better. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of people who even prefer Machining Worker Ant. I mean, I think Machining Worker Ant looks pretty cool. I mean, it looks cool. I actually use it in most of my Mega decks just because I kind of like the aesthetic. Although Directus just, it feels more natural a lot of the time. Until they print Larva Mutant Giraffe, then I'm transitioning right over because I like Larva Mutant. You know, just
yeah,
IMO. All right, so triggers. It seems like fairly simple stuff across the board, right? You got your 4 draw PG, you got your 8 crit, you got your 4 heal guardian. Anything to know about this ratio or heal guardians or anything in that front?
Yes, sure. So here's the thing: is that as a general rule of thumb with the Megacolony decks, because I've experimented with every single one of them, a general rule of thumb is if you're able to get off multiple drive checks in your deck, don't run the draw PGs. That's my general rule of thumb when it comes to building the Megacolony decks. And this deck does do multiple drive checks, but I still want the draw PGs for two very specific reasons. Reason one, it helps me draw into the pieces that I'm missing early game. And reason number two, it's also another way to discard any extra intrude scissors in my hand that I don't want to ride.
Or make no Battler S because it can come back for drop anyway. Smile.
Well, the thing is that if you're going to get into drop, it's better to just call it, attack with it, and then intercept with it during that turn.
Yeah, unless of course you're having things like Armor Beetle and Carafa out there anyway, right? Like if your field's already sort of full and you just happen to draw into this.
I mean, if it's the grade 2 game, you're not going to worry too much about having them intercept anything. Well, if you're going first, you're not going to worry about them having to intercept anything. So having the Battle S as one of your attackers, if you're going first with it, is perfectly fine, so that you can just intercept with it the next turn and then just having your drop zone anyway.
All right, okay, that's fair. So even though it is a discard fodder, generally speaking, the only way it's a discard fodder is if the situation calls for it. You don't generally aim for that.
I mean, there's plenty of other cards in the deck that we use more often late game that can discard things. However, the PGs, like I said, the main reason that I have them is just so that I can draw into my pieces early that I'm missing, which is also why we're running the ratios of 4 Battler S's and 4 Armor Beetles. Those are the two that we really want to see once we get to our Master Beetle. And also it helps us search for Master Beetle as well, given that it's a draw, hopefully drawing into more Master Beetles if we don't have them yet.
Fair enough. And of course you have the 8 crit because it's critical triggers. You don't even have the option to front, so you're just going to be running crits because otherwise it's 12 draws and that's just a speed run the deck out.
Yeah, even if the deck had options to fronts, I wouldn't play them because the crits are more impactful. Since the intrude scissor is going to stand one of your rear guards if they take a hit during that turn, now you're playing a very risky game where, okay, if I no guard the Vanguard, now it's going to be potentially getting a bunch of crits and a bunch of power on the rear guard. But if I don't guard the Vanguard, now I'm going to be taking a bunch of crits to the face.
Yeah, that is true. Plus, it's also worthy of note that fronts wouldn't work anyway because your attack patterns is such that your Vanguard's either the last or second to last attack.
You see, that's the thing is that if you wanted to, if there were 2 intrude scissors in your drop zone, you can call both of them to your back row to restand your 2 front row units.
True. Potentially, although, wow, that's a really gimmicky way to make use of a front trigger, though.
Very gimmicky, but either way, fronts wouldn't really matter in this deck, even if they were allowed in Megacolony.
Right.
Technically in Premium, but we're not talking Premium.
Yeah, oh man, Premium Megacolony is so far removed here. That's not even worthy of like a discussion at this point. So of course, 4 Heal Guardian. I suppose the aim here is quite simple. Don't get rushed down early because you're not exactly the fastest deck in the world. You don't got a limit break to speak of.
Yeah, like legit, you really only need 2 counterblasts during your first grade 3 ride. If you have the third one, that will only be because you have the intrusives in your drop, and you either A, want to use it early, or B, just want that extra counterblast just so that you can guard more during your opponent's turn. So having the Heal Guardian really does just help out you surviving until you get to the turn where you can actually make your plays.
Yeah, one benefit you have with guards to the Heal Guardian as well is it's a 15k shield, which sucks, of course, compared to 20k shield, but then you just look at M, and M could be a potential 20k shield. Now, of course, it's only a 20k shield if the attack pattern is such that when 20k shield pops up, your opponent has some rested units out there already. But, you know, the fact that it's even possible is a nice little defensive boon where you get to eat your cake and have it too.
Yeah, it works. That's all that really is important, isn't it?
Yeah, it works, right? So any closing thoughts here on good old Master Beetle?
I think this puts the other deck profile on here to shame. I think we can go ahead and just archive that and make sure that no one ever has to see that again, and have this be the definitive Megacolony profile on the channel that everyone comes to and remembers.
Yeah, that other one was I'll keep it up there for the funny memes of it, but yeah, this is like, you know, the the on-brand Master Beetle
Yeah.
deck profile, we'll say. This is the on-brand
But
one.
real talk, I put a lot of thought into this deck. I put a lot of love into this deck. I've always loved Master Beetle ever since it was revealed. I really thought it was underrated as a unit when people were just thinking that it was only good to be used alongside a Garafa. I was like the only one ever to use it as its own boss unit. I was like the only one that all my friends knew that were actually making it usable. And the fact that it has that the newest can collection has given it all these cards that at face value you think, they're okay, but when you really get into it, it's like, holy shit, this can do a lot. I just love the deck.
Yeah, that's
Not as much as I love Gun and Colio, though. Not as much as I love Gun and Colio. Gun and Colio will always be my favorite unit, but this is a very close second.
Yeah, it's a solid deck, you know, through and through. Clear game plan, a lot of units with multiple utility. They seamlessly work together. There's a lot to love here about this deck. Really, really good stuff. And just to throw a final note on this one, if you guys do like this profile and want to see more Maz, my boy here actually does have a channel. Not much content as of the recording of this video yet, but he does stream Master Duel. Also has other deck profiles he's popping up. So if you like Yu-Gi-Oh or Vanguard, then do be sure to check him out. I'll have the link in the description below.
I actually just uploaded a video of my first place shop tournament profile for Zorga, believe it or not.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one too.
Yeah, feel free to watch it. It's noisy as fuck because the people on my logos love to talk. So watch it. Don't watch it. It really doesn't make a difference to me or not. I normally don't do well when it comes to like talking about things I like or things that I've worked on. But hey, if it works, it works.
That's gonna be that's gonna be the thumbnail quote now, just because of that. It just works.
No, if it works, it works, okay?
If it works, it works. I'm not sure if that's a cool line or a copium line. I guess it'll have to be up to personal interpretation from the audience. Anyway, that was the deck profile. If you guys do like this Vanguard content, then also be sure to subscribe to my channel, as well as Maz's, and turn on the notification bell for future uploads. I generally do a lot of fight videos between decks, as well as discussion for new reveals, at least for V and Premium, and also other neat little videos on the side. So there's a lot of content here on the way, so be sure to subscribe. And with that, take care, and God bless.